Okay, so good morning, dear students. We have discussed two aspects of William Shakespeare's play till now. One of the aspect was delay in William Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Another was madness in Hamlet. Now we come to third important aspect of the play, which is evaluation of Hamlet as a revenge tragedy. Tradition of revenge in European plays has been quite old. It was present in European plays before William Shakespeare, and there were very clear-cut dimensions regarding what should be there in a revenge tragedy. As the name implies, revenge means there must be some person with whom injustice has been done. So there must be a perpetrator, a person who commits injustice to somebody. And when injustice is done to a party, that aggrieved party decides to take revenge, either himself or laying it duty on the successor. Usually, what happened was that a father was killed, so it was son's duty to take revenge. A brother or sister was killed, so the surviving sibling, means either brother or sister, had to take revenge. And revenge was considered a sacred duty, means you cannot escape from taking revenge. It was your moral duty as a son, as a brother, as a sister, as a father. When something wrong has been done to your relative, you were supposed to right that wrong. This is one thing. So, since there was revenge, there used to be many deaths and killings. You know, the aggrieved person used to kill the villain, and so it was a kind of litany of murder scenes. There were so many murder scenes. There were so many, gruesome killings on the stage of the stage, which was there. Next thing was that there was a sense of exploitation, sense of grief, sense of sorrow, which was usually prevalent in such plays. And these plays were very popular with the audience. You can very well visualize the comparison between these revenge plays and Hindi movies. Most of our Hindi movies, which were made earlier at a time, up to 90s or 2000, they were kind of revenge plays. The villain does something bad to the hero's mother, father, and he becomes aggrieved, and he kills the villain in the end. So the plot was usually the same. In European plays, this tradition came from Seneca. So we usually associate revenge tragedies with Seneca. And when it came to Elizabethan age, and particularly to William Shakespeare adopted the same dominant stream of his times. But since he was a genius and he was able to transform the predominantly revenge theme of the plays into his distinctive genre. So we are going to analyze how William Shakespeare inherited the revenge tradition from earlier playwrights, which was already there in British stage, on British stage in British drama, and how William Shakespeare was able to go beyond the limitations of revenge theme. Since he was a genius, so he was not bound within the constrictions, within the limitations of the revenge theme. He he surpasses the bounds of revenge theme, and he gives something else. He gives brilliant characterization, and even the revenge theme is treated by him with a pinch of salt. He suspects that whether revenge is really laudable human action, whether revenge is really worthwhile thing to take or not, as we have discussed earlier also, that Hamlet again and again contemplates: is it good to kill a person? Can't there be another way? How much you can inflict pain on people? And if you start taking revenge, doesn't it boomerang on himself also? You kill a person, so one portion of you is also killed. By killing a human being, you also become insensitive and hard. And Hamlet wants to avoid it. So William Shakespeare uses revenge theme in his play. The story is usually which seems to reflect what was usual in revenge plays. Father is killed, son is there, son is asked to take revenge, right? And ultimately kills the villain. But within the play, we see there are various streams, which have a distinctive stem of William Shakespeare. His sensitive handling of Hamlet's character, for instance. Then multiple revenges are introduced. Laertes' revenge, right? Fortinbras' revenge, and Hamlet's revenge is, of course, the main story. So these multiple revenges, they affect one another and they transform each other, thus bringing into a complication which William Shakespeare introduces in his play. Right? So let us read it and try to discuss certain other salient features which are there. Revenge, the desire to retaliate for an injury, is a powerful, natural, and dangerous human emotion. So it's a powerful emotion, at the same time, it's a dangerous human emotion. It is as prevalent in modern world as it ever was among the figures of the heroic and legendary past. And revenge as a human emotion has been since the beginning of human civilization. It was uh, there very early and it's now also. It is still to be found in the bedchambers as commonly as on the battlefield. And revenge somehow by appealing to our animal instincts on the one hand, secondly by satisfying our ego by giving us stature. It has been part of human experience of this earth. It was there and it's still there. It can be source of political and domestic horror. It brings about a feeling of horror, and it has been part of domestic affair. In India, we hear people being killed on the name of honor, right? And then somebody from the killed family takes a revenge on the perpetrators of the crime. So revenge is has been very sensitive topic with humanity, and there are multiple reasons. There are multiple fields for it: political fields and domestic fields. Revenge is a feeling that never sleeps. It's a feeling that greatly appeals to dramatists since it provides a coherent and logical framework for the depiction of human passion. Why revenge has been so popular? For presentation in dramas, for presentation in movies, for presentation in myths, etc. Because there is something fundamental about it. Somehow it appeals to human emotions and it strongly incites human emotions. A series of events can clearly be seen to start with some original crime and end when the crime has been avenged. So there is a crime and there is an avenger and the crime is avenged. The Greek tragedians used it many times and it reached the Elizabethans as part of the classical heritage through the literature of Rome. Many Greek tragedy writers used it in their dramas, and it was also there in Rome, and it's supposed that it came from Rome to Greece. Revenge tragedies essentially associated with the name of Seneca, an ancient Roman dramatist. Usually, when we talk about revenge tragedies, we talk about Seneca, who was the earliest proponent of this theme. He was a Roman dramatist, and his plays are heavily connected with the presentation of revenge theme. All the 10 tragedies written by him deal with incidents taken from Greek mythology. But instead of exercising the restraint of classical Greek mythology, Seneca produced the tragic effect by horrifying incidents, terrifying incidents, bloody actions, and renting speeches. Renting means melodramatic speeches. Seneca's tragedies are well known for their gruesome presentation of action on the stage. There were so many killings and horror scenes on the stage, and renting melodramatic speeches on the stage, and bloody actions were there. So Seneca, in a way, presented the gruesome, the horrifying aspect of revenge tragedies. One of his plays has the title Hercules Furens, which means raging Hercules, and the title itself is sufficiently indicative of the thematic treatment. Raging, somebody who is full of anger, somebody who is giving, you know, emotional and melodramatic speeches, And I hope you know Hercules. Hercules was the strong man. He was a very powerful person in ancient myths. In writing Hamlet, Shakespeare to some extent adopted the dramatic tradition of revenge tragedy. So when we come to Hamlet, we see that Shakespeare has also adopted certain techniques from revenge tragedy. Obviously, the story from which Shakespeare drew his material for writing this play had a dominating revenge theme. We also understand that Hamlet was not the original story created by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare borrowed this story from earlier sources. And the earlier sources from which William Shakespeare borrowed this story was full of those elements which are usually connected with revenge tragedies. Shakespeare must have known and perhaps even acted in earlier plays of this type and could easily see how the Hamlet theme might be treated in the manner of these plays. So, since he was a dramatist as well as an actor, he must have seen how popular these revenge tragedies were on the stage. So, he must have borrowed the conventions from his own experiences as well as from the earlier draft of the play from which the story of Hamlet has been taken. The reason why the revenge theme came to have some importance in the writing of dramas was that this theme offered much scope for the display of passions. We have talked about it. That the revenge tragedies are full of passions. They give ample scope to present emotional speeches. They have a scope for producing pitiful scenes on the stage. So, images, such presentations were very popular with the audience, and William Shakespeare knew it. That by using revenge motif in his plays, he will be able to present emotional quotient within his plays. He would be able to treat emotional passions and sentiments and speeches and actions on the stage. For rhetorical speeches, speeches which are used to impress other people, rhetoric is a literary device in which what is more important is the impression it makes on the audience. That is rhetoric. And for violent action, and revenge tragedies presented a scope for violent action also. In the early days of the secular theatre, such elements naturally had a more immediate appeal than, say, the actions of characters in comparative static situations or at a lower emotional pitch. So, since it presented emotional intensity, so such plays were very famous. The theme of revenge stirred people to much greater emotional excitement than ordinary themes could have done. So, revenge theme provided a much greater opportunity for exploitation of emotional nature of uh, audience who were greatly affected by the emotional speeches and sentimental speeches and pitiful scenes on the stage. Revenge as a theme needed exciting plots. The story used to be very exciting. Somebody kills him, and the secrecy, and the scenes related to killing a person on the stage and to take revenge and such things. And such plots were in tradition of the revenge tragedy. Then we discuss how there have been certain famous plays like Thomas Kyd's The Spanish Tragedy and even Shakespeare's own Titus Andronicus, which were very much in the tradition of revenge tragedies. And to a great extent, they reflected revenge tragedies in their pure form. So we can leave this paragraph and come to the next one, wherein we discuss the role of ghost in the play. A stock element of the revenge situation came to be the ghost, a manifestation of a spirit feeling restless because of a desire for vengeance against the person who has caused suffering. In usual revenge tragedies, there was a ghost or some malcontent spirit which used to be unsatisfied because he or she had been killed uh, suddenly and in an undeserving way. So this ghost who represented supernatural element was part of the plot of the play in which such spirits and ghosts were supposed to be unsatisfied malcontent spirits which used to hanker after the revenge. The role of the ghost was to urge the avenger to action, and these ghosts used to urge the person who should take revenge from the criminal. And vengeance was then sought and taken in a series of sensational episodes. Hamlet has clear affinities with this type of revenge tragedy. Here, the Prince of Denmark is urged in very strong terms by the ghost of the dead king to wreak vengeance upon Claudius, who has ascended to the throne by foul means, but whose guilt is unknown to anybody. So we see in the play how in the very first scene of the play, first and second scene of the play, how the ghost comes and asks Hamlet to take revenge because he has been killed by Claudius, and as a son, it is supposed to be Hamlet's duty to take revenge. Hamlet adopts the device of staging a play to verify the ghost story, which proves authentic in view of Claudius' reaction to the said play. Then there is an incident of play within the play wherein the mousetrap play is played, and how Hamlet is able to confirm the story of ghost by observing the reactions of Claudius. The central theme of Hamlet thus becomes revenge, and ultimately the revenge is taken, although the situation in which it is taken is not of Avengers making, and although the revenge costs the Avenger his own life. So ultimately we find that Hamlet is able to kill Claudius, but of course at a great cost. That he himself dies and so many other people die because of his delay. The play Hamlet thus follows the major conventions of contemporary revenge tragedy. Of course, we agree that there are so many conventions which are related to tradition of revenge tragedy, which are followed in this play. Apart from the central theme, which is revenge, and apart from the role of the instigator played by a ghost, we have plenty of melodramatic actions here. Another important aspect of revenge tragedies was melodramatic incidents. And Hamlet also has melodramatic incidents, a plenty of those. We have violent, bloody, and terrifying scenes which were the staple of revenge tragedy at the time. And such scenes were usually found in revenge tragedies. There is, for instance, the murder of Polonius committed by Hamlet before our own eyes. One such bloody scene is how Hamlet kills Polonius. There is the scene of revolt by the enraged Laertes who would have attacked the monarch if the latter had not been tactful enough to bring him under control. Another scene in which, Laertes revolts against Claudius. He brings people, violent people into the king's presence, and he is ready to kill the king if the justice is not given to him. There are the scenes of Ophelia going mad, getting drowned, and being buried. Then other scenes which are melodramatic are Ophelia's drowning in the river and how she is buried, and there is conflict there on her burial. There is the incident of Laertes leaping into the grave meet for Ophelia, followed by Hamlet's leaping into it. And we see how Laertes, out of his sorrow for the death of his sister, jumps into the grave, and how Hamlet follows him, and there is a scuffle between the two in the grave. Finally, there are the murders which bring the play to a close. The queen is first to die, having drunk poisoned wine. Then the king dies, having been stabbed by Hamlet. The next to die is Laertes, who has been stabbed by Hamlet with a rapier dipped in poison. The last to die is the hero himself. There are so many deaths on the stage. You know, multiple people have to die on the stage, and they are shown dying before the audience very eyes. He is mortally wounded by the same rapier which he afterwards wounds Laertes. These several deaths on the stage are obviously a melodramatic character. So we find the stage is full of bodies towards the end of the play, and it reveals a melodramatic strain in the play. So up till now we saw what kind of elements qualify Hamlet as a revenge tragedy. Now we will discuss what is different in Hamlet from being a staple revenge tragedy. We cannot call it a conventional, you know, usual kind of revenge tragedy. There are certain elements, certain things which make this play go beyond a common general kind of revenge tragedy. What are these plays which make it beyond a simple revenge tragedy? Shakespeare, however, lifts his play to the level of genuine tragedy, a higher work of art as compared with the melodramatic plays of revenge playwrights. So there is something which William Shakespeare puts within the play, which make this play a higher kind of tragedy. And move it beyond the limitations of revenge tragedies. In the first place, Shakespeare chose a theme dealing with a duty higher than the others, namely a son's revenge for the murder of his father. One thing is that Shakespeare gives within the play revenge theme a twist, and that twist is introduced by analyzing whether it's the duty of a son to avenge his father or not. It's not taken on a simple plane. It's not taken in very simplistic terms. Rather, Shakespeare seems to be complicating the situation. He seems to be questioning again and again, is it correct? Is it right for a son to kill the murderer of his father? And is it right to kill? So, the more important than that is the psychological refinement in Shakespeare's plays, in which the conscience, instead of any physical impediment, acts as the deterrent. Now, what stops Hamlet from taking revenge? It's not the outer circumstances. Of course, the king might be very cautious and might have guards around him, but we do not see much hint within the play about this thing. What stops Hamlet from taking revenge? It's his own conscience. That he questions himself, he questions the motive of revenge, he questions the killing of people, he questions the nature of duty which is imposed over him. So it is his own conscience which acts as an impediment, as an obstacle, not the outer circumstances. In the conventional revenge tragedies, the obstructions in the way of revenge were certain material considerations. But in Shakespeare's play, the obstacle is conscience coupled with a temperamental incapacity. First thing is the moral nature of Hamlet. Second thing is he is unsuitable to be a revenger, rather an avenger, not revenger, rather an avenger. He is unsuitable to be an avenger because by nature he is a reflective man. By nature he is a contemplative person who thinks who thinks too much rather. So, these two things, the moral nature of the hero as well as his unsuitability for the action, which is dominantly treated by William Shakespeare as the impediments against the hero from taking revenge. Shakespeare's play moves in a higher plane of significance through the reflection of the hero and through his relationship with the outside world. Finally, there is the grandeur of Shakespeare's poetry, which has its own share in toning down the crudity of violence in the play. And then there is beautiful poetry, which somehow tones down the crudity, the simplicity, and the rough nature of usual revenge tragedies. The main center of interest in Shakespeare's play is the character of Hamlet, and it is in the delineation of the character that the superiority of the play lies. The character of Hamlet is at the center of the play, not the revenge theme. We analyze the character of Hamlet, we think about him, we discuss his motives. So the main interest of the play is not the revenge, but rather the hero, Hamlet. Shakespeare has here portrayed a character of enormous intellectual caliber combined with an aversion to real action. He is a very sensitive scholar. He knows so many things. He represents perfection in so many spheres. So it's nice to have perfection in so many spheres, but this perfection also makes Hamlet incapable of taking revenge. The character Shakespeare places in circumstances under which he is required to act, but he vacillates and wavers on account of his habit of thinking too much. It is in his soliloquies that we discover the real nature of Hamlet. He forms a firm resolve to take revenge, but is lacking in the power of action. I think we have discussed in the question referring to delay how Hamlet is unable to take revenge and how he continues delays his action because of his over refinement of temper. He forms a firm resolve to take revenge, but is lacking in the power of action. He is a man living in meditation, called upon to act by every motive, human and divine, but the great object of his life is defeated by his continually resolving to do, yet doing nothing, what he is doing. So we see how sensitive a persona he is. He continuously thinks about pros and cons of the action he is going to undertake. And since he thinks too much, reflects too much, the spirit of action is drained from him. But okay, forget. He who reflects too much will accomplish little, said a wise man, and Hamlet proves the truth of this remark. Hamlet sees or endeavors to see every side of a question. Right? He wants to analyze multiple facets of any problem. He tries to strike the exact balance between conflicting considerations. His resolve to do the deed is undermined by the half-conscious effect of objections and scruples. Imagination conjures up visions of what may befall, and willpower is paralyzed. How he is his oversensitive imagination, overheated imagination, makes him thinks about the multiple effects, the cascading effect of his actions, and how because of this overthinking he is unable to take firm action. And so there is that famous quotation from Hamlet when he says, "Thus conscience does make coward of us all. In this way, our own conscience makes us cowards." हमारी खुद की आत्मा हमें डरपोक बना देती है. And thus the native hue of resolution is cycled over with the pale cast of thought. The firm resolve becomes weak because of the paleness given by our reflection over things, our insistent reflection over things. To Hamlet, the procrastinator does much, but whatever he does belongs to the category of impulsive action. It's not that Hamlet does not take action, he takes action sometimes. But whenever he takes action, it is only because of a sudden impulse. He is able to take action only on a sudden impulse. So he kills Polonius because suddenly he thinks there is somebody behind the curtain. It's not a meditated action. Whenever he meditates, whenever he thinks, he is unable to take action. None of his deeds is premeditated. When he begins to do a deed, it's not done. Hamlet is preeminently the tragedy of thought. So, in this manner, we can understand that Hamlet is a tragedy of thought rather than a revenge tragedy. And towards the end of the play, and end of this question, towards the end of this question, you can discuss how there are strains of revenge tragedies within Hamlet, but these strains do not make up the whole story of the play. The major thematic drive of the play is located on the character. And William Shakespeare is able to give multiple meanings to the revenge by analyzing its pros and cons. Right? So, in this way, we will end this question of whether Hamlet is a revenge tragedy or not. Of course, it's a revenge tragedy, but it's a revenge tragedy of a different type. It's not, usual kind of revenge tragedy. It's not run of the mill kind of revenge tragedy. It's a revenge tragedy with a difference. And this difference is there because of emphasis on the character of Hamlet, because of the multiple vision which William Shakespeare introduces in this play. Right?